Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with New York City jazz pianist and composer Paul Shinn. We talked to him on April 1st, 2020 about this strange new COVID-19 world. He was born in Germany, raised in Kansas City, and now he's in New York. He moved to New York right before the pandemic began, and he plays and composes a unique blend of forward-thinking style of traditional sounds that includes blues, swing, stride, and bebop. He has great stories of the towns he's played in, and there's been quite a bit like KC, Denver, and New York City, and he's got a great bio. Enjoy.
Hey, thanks for taking a minute. How far back was that email I sent you? I can't even remember.
I don't either. Maybe half a year or more.
It was probably around when the pandemic hit. I was really kind of going.
Oh yeah, actually it was. Yeah, it was in April. Yeah.
Okay.
April.
Yeah. I was really kind of going hard after getting a lot of musicians and talking to them about what was going on. So it's there's going to be a lot of interviews from that time. So it's good to kind of spread this out because I think at that time we thought, we'll get over this. We'll get back to it. It'll be around fall and winter. But at any rate, Paul, I've seen you live. I've always enjoyed your work. Thanks for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. Well, I've seen that you've had a lot of interviews. I've listened to a few of them, and it's just impressive. The breadth, and you've interviewed so many people.
Yeah.
all kinds of people from all over the world. New York, Kansas City. So.
It's fun, man. I love it. Yeah, and it's been extremely interesting during this pandemic to talk to so many people from around the world. Yeah, so it's it kind of puts what we're doing here in America under a microscope. When you start talking to people in Germany and Norway and other places around the globe. So with that in mind, talking about what's going on in the world, we're in this weird surreal state of no live jazz and just all of this uncertainty throwing in, racial unrest and an election coming up. What have you been doing during this pandemic to kind of keep yourself satiated in a creative way?
Honestly, practicing a lot. It's just staying busy. Practicing a lot of classical music, Bach in particular. Actually, I've had such a oddly narrow focus because at the beginning of this year, and this is not something, people really like to talk about, especially if you're as a musician. But I injured my thumb. I was skiing, and everyone every time I say I'm going skiing, people are like, "Hey, watch out for your hands," and I'm like, I know, but I don't want to just not do anything because I'm always watching out for my hands.
Right.
And there's this injury that's pretty common called skier's thumb. When if you have a ski pole, you fall and you land on your thumb, and one of the ligaments, there's two ligaments on your thumb, and I didn't do it while I was skiing. It was just while I was moving my skis around, and so the other ligament, basically the ligament stretched out. Went to the doctor. He looked at it. He's like, all right, yeah, that nothing got broken, but it's going to take a while to get back. So I've been really basically since February, I've just been trying to get back to 100% essentially, which has basically happened. And that is, it's allowed me to, I had to, because that's kind of a thing. And you're like, oh, if you get an injury, it can kind of ruin your career. Or at least you have to for music, or at least you have to adapt, a lot. And so I feel lucky now, very grateful that basically I'm at 100% and I can do everything I've ever been able to do, and even more now because it's I had to break it down. After I hurt my thumb, I was at the doctor and I could barely, it was so any kind of touch on it was just I had to take a minute or two to just for the first couple of days it was so painful. But I was in the middle of. This is kind of a long story. I realize this is one quote. This is the first question still. But anyway, I was playing the piano there and going skiing. I've been doing this. This is my fourth year. I've done that where I've played some piano there in a restaurant. And I've it's actually a kind of a bar of a really nice ski hotel there. Schwarze Adler in this town called St. Anton, which is right next to one of the ski towns that got like one of the first outbreaks in Austria, because that was like one of the first places where pandemics hit. So anyway, I was over there, injured my thumb, and but I didn't want to like give up this gig because it was really nice. It was like we were playing like it was 4 or 5 nights a week. I would play like 2 hours with a trio, and then after that I would play 2 hours at night. You know, it's kind of really just a really nice opportunity. So I was doing that and do that for a whole month. Because I'm like, I can't, you know. So basically I just didn't tell anyone that I got hurt because I still wanted to play the gig. And so I just sort of had to adapt my playing to get through that month a little bit. But the weird thing is then the next day, the bass player, he broke his wrist. And so then he had, so it's sounding like skiing and piano, you know, I'm going to have to be limiting my skiing days. It's kind of like a family, but, you know, grew up in my whole family, like, go skiing. Like, my mom's a ski instructor. 2 of my brothers are ski instructors and snowboarders. But anyway, the whole point is now I've finally, or not finally, but, like, I'm, creatively speaking, I'm starting to be able to just kind of put get my shit back on course, so to speak, get the sales straight away. Because right when the pandemic hit, I felt just like pretty much, you know, I felt like some of the other musicians I would talk to, just like this crazy, unexplainable, like lack of motivation, you know, and everyone, you know, it applies to all sorts of people and just everyone in general maybe too, where just all of a sudden you're like, you know, what's like the pandemic hit and all sorts of questions happen. But for music and being creative, it's just tough because you're like, where do I get my source material from? Like, where do I get my inspiration? and so, yeah, I think there's going to be, because this is just so unlike, because normally when there's a problem, like, you can, like, kind of band together and, like, make music. And I think, you know, now it's just like, yeah, you can sort of still do that, but the impact of it is just not the same because there's not enough people. And it's like having people and being around people that's what music is about, pretty much. It's like, well, if there's no places where there's going to be able to be people and I'm not going to be able to perform the music, then there's just no inspiration because there's no people to connect it with. At least that's how I felt. So now it's like, okay, things are opening back up again, and like people have been taking this time to like work on certain projects, and you kind of see like what some people have been doing, and you know, just new connections are getting made because like business is going to change. Like how you make money is going to change. Yeah, just to be flexible. Yeah, I mean, that's just so general too for all kinds of professions. But the music's the same way. You got to be on your toes and take opportunities when they present themselves.
I guess that was the perception when this happened. I remember in the beginning it was like, you know, everything's shut down. We've never experienced that before. And then they're like, well, yeah, you know, because spring break was coming up. School, we'll be back after spring break. And then it was like, no, let's push it back another 2 or 3 weeks. And then it was like, are we even going to go back to school? And then that's over with. So it's like all of this has been adaptability for everybody. All of us are going through trauma. All of us are realizing that at the end of the day, as much as everybody says that, you know, we're going to go back to normal, that's gone. March 12th's gone, and it's gone irrevocably, you know, and I don't want to be negative about it, but that's just the way it is. But my positivity of this is that I've still been going to shows. Jackie Myers has been doing with the drive-in concerts, and I've still been really actively engaged. And I just feel like we can look at 2020. A lot of people are going to look at it as this disaster, wasted year, but we have one shot down here. We either take this and run with it and do the best we can. Cool. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing. You know, everything that we were on March 12th has only gotten magnified now. So if we were negative before, it's going to be negative in a really bad way now. But if it was positive before, you run and you find ways to live and survive, and that's just all we got, man, you know? But speaking of survival and speaking of living, you started out born in Germany. You made your way to New York and Kansas City. Talk to me a little bit about your trajectory and how in 2020 now we're talking in Kansas City. Yeah,
so I grew up in Kansas City. I was born in Germany, moved when I was like 3 months old back to Kansas City. But I just basically grew up every year as a family. We would go live in Germany for a month, 1 to 3 months, because my grandma lived there. And so kind of like during the summertime, and we'd go to school there too because their school year was longer. So basically grew up a little bit in Germany and then mainly in America, in Kansas City. Yeah, I went to school at UMKC, which, you know, is such a huge presence in the Kansas City jazz community. Just, I mean, probably just pretty much touches everything. Probably mainly because of Bobby, or I mean, for the, you know, yeah, a lot has to do with him. Yeah, then went to University of North Texas. Then I lived in Colorado for a while, and lived in Kansas City, and spent some time in New York. So yeah, really just been hopping around quite a bit. But now I'm back living in New York. I was living in Kansas City, and this year I moved to New York right when the pandemic hit, and then still here. But it feels, you know, location feels so relative now, just in some ways. But, you know, I have a brother who lives in Germany, and so, you know, I'm born in Germany, so I got a German passport. So that's, you know, that's on the table. Like when I was, I don't know, spent some time in Berlin talking with people there, which is cool. And just kind of the people I've already met in Austria, been doing this, you know, this skiing and jazz stuff the past 4 years, which has been amazing. So I think the thing, it's just kind of keeping your options open at this point and just realizing that, you know, jazz in New York is, while it's still a gold standard. Like this past weekend, I was seeing Johnny O'Neill on the piano, who I think is, you know, so amazing. He's just an amazing piano, but it was like on a keyboard on a sidewalk, you know, and it was cool because you're sitting there and you're like, this is nice. But then, you know, you're kind of like, there are such, like, there's all these buildings and like venues that have these amazing pianos and listening rooms, and like this is what live music has been reduced to in some sense, like the drive-in concerts you mentioned, you know. And it's like, and that's good that we're, you know, the spirit of it, but I think, and I was thinking about this earlier with something you said, but you know, it's kind of the question of like, how much do people value being around other people? Because, you know, you can just be at home on a screen all day, no problem. Like, it's pretty easy. And, but then at some point, you know, you're going to want more. But then it's like, do you reach deeper into the screen, or do you have you been brought up in a culture where that says like, you know, being around other people and sharing moments with other people is important? And I think that's like musicians a lot of times, and people that enjoy music in general, I think, are like that. You know, because music is just, you know, you kind of have to stop for a second and listen to it, you know, and like it gets to be in the moment for a second. You got to slow things down. You can't, but sometimes so.
Yeah.
That was a ramble.
No, you're good. No. So, you know, spending a lot of time here in Kansas City, what did you like best about Kansas City?
The best part for me about Kansas City was, first off, getting to study with Bram. That was the number one thing, Bram Winans. He basically taught me how to play jazz and, you know, in stride. Learned that, you know, almost religiously from him. Just because, I mean, he's the best. I mean, God, he's so good. You know, and it's amazing that he's here, you know, in Kansas City, such a treasure. Every Friday, Saturday, it's majestic. Anyone that comes in from out of town, all musicians, or anyone I show this video, any of his videos to, they're like, minds are blown. Like, I was playing at Catano a couple of years ago here in New York, and he came and, you know, he played like one song, and the waiters or the bartenders are like, who the fuck is, who is that? And, you know, I'm like, well, but that's the people who, you know, are like the ones that get impressed the least easily, I guess, are like the bartenders, because they're there every night. They're like, you know, in New York, if you're at a jazz club every night in New York, you're going to see awesome stuff happening. And if you know, and someone like Bram comes in and they're like, whoa, what is that? You know, and he actually met Johnny O'Neill. One time we went and, when Bram was in New York, we went and saw Johnny O'Neill, spent some time, because Johnny O'Neill plays some stride as well. And then there's also this, anyway, so that was one of the things I liked best about Kansas City was studying with Bram, and then the opportunity I had, so it was pretty much in 2015, and then this past year, I spent each time 1 year in Kansas City, and the first time I had the amazing opportunity to start playing with Ryan Lee and Dominique Sanders as a trio for the summer, and that was with Green Lady, right when they were kind of opening up. I think it was like when they first started. The first gig was Bram. He was playing solo. This is when the piano was upstairs in the middle, and then John Scott, and I was just going there talking all the time, probably pretty much the only person there, and John Scott was behind the bar. But at the time, he did everything. He was there, yeah, man. And yeah, so then he said, yeah, do you guys want to start playing? He's like, yeah, can you play Sunday nights, like 10:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m.? It's like, what? Like, why? Like, you know, I mean, yes, of course, but like, are there going to be people there, you know? Anyway, so started doing it and just, you know, did it basically all summer long, wrote a new song every time, and then recorded an album at the end of that summer. But then I went off to school in Texas, or maybe then I went to Colorado. Anyway, the point is, I basically, from then on, I performed with Ryan and Dominique as much as I could. And we would usually do it by, like, I would come to Kansas City, or that's when I was living in Colorado. They would come to Colorado. Basically, that was the best part about being in Kansas City, was the opportunity to be able to perform my own music, my own compositions. You know, I'm not saying that, but it does seem like more people have been doing that now in Kansas City. And you know, maybe it was happening more, but I just wasn't aware of it. But that definitely seems to be a trend, because it seems to be like, you know, less, well, anyway, yeah, more focus on original music, which is great. And then this past year I was in Kansas City, the best thing I liked, and I just had a, you know, amazing opportunity to work with so many great singers. I just hadn't ever known that part of Kansas City, just to accompany singers on the piano. Or I shouldn't say just to. It's like I've always just been part of bands, you know. And when I say just, I mean, you know, only the piano. And, you know, just kind of the areas you can explore with that. And, yeah, just some really cool singers just in the past year. Like, I mean, seriously, just pretty much the gamut of, like, I played a lot with Havila, some gigs with Molly Hammer, David Bassie was cool. Lucy Winans, that's Brown's daughter, Emily Dix. There's just, probably, sorry if I'm not mentioning some people, but, you know, just some of the people that are playing a lot around town. I might have played with Millie once, too. But I played with her, like, 10 or 12 years ago for the first time, Millie Edwards. I think Kansas City, the people are so nice, so welcoming, the scene. I think the one thing that I kind of, and why the reason I'm not living there, is I do feel that it's not like it's the audience's fault or even the community's fault, but there's not quite this sense of urgency. And, you know, maybe something like COVID has brought this about, and this is something you were touching about earlier, is that, like, here in New York, for example, I'm not saying, you know, New York's pretty extreme, but at least for me, like, you know, coming from the Midwest, just that sense of urgency where it's like, hey, you get up and you get your one solo, like, you better make this one count, you know? Like, you don't, it's not like you're just going to get, you know, in Kansas City, you can just get a gig. Like, I was, you know, this past year to show up and, you know, playing pretty soon, like 5 nights a week, a lot of doubles. Like, I was playing, you know, 7 or 8 gigs a week. Like, I wasn't even really trying to get gigs. I'm not, like, I'm not bragging, and I don't even know if that's a lot, but the point is, like, in New York, it's like you get 1 gig a month, and it pays, like, $50 or less, and it's like it has to be all original music, and you have to have a rehearsal. I mean, I shouldn't say, like, the rules are different now. You know, who knows what it is now because of the streaming, and in Kansas City, it's just, I guess I'm talking more about the listening aspect of it. So that's kind of the main, because there's no, like, there's some places to listen, like the Blue Room can be good for, like, a pure listening room. And I don't know, who knows? I feel like there's new places coming up. Lonnie just announced he opened up a club. Like, God, like, what a guy. Oh, gosh, talk about people I forgot to mention. I played a bunch with Lonnie last year. Jeez. Wow. Yeah, that guy's amazing. Yeah. Amazing person, amazing, just so talented, amazing musician. And he works really hard, you know, especially on his music. I really respect that about him. Like, he's, like, always talking about music stuff, and you're like, man, you're, like, you know, I mean, he's older than me, just put it that way. But, like, he's been around, and he's still that hungry, you know. So I'm like, man, that's inspiring. I want to be like that guy. But anyway, so it's like, but Lonnie, a place like that, that could be like a listening room. I don't know how he's going to run it. I don't know, but it's in like it's with a hotel, so that could be tough. But yeah, just that's one thing about Kansas City is, like, when you have a listening room, that you can demand more from your audience. You can bring more, like, nuanced arrangements, you know. You can kind of put your show out there. And I think that's what it would take to, because that's the level that KC musicians need to get to, I think, in order to compete worldwide. Because like, everyone's like, oh, people don't know, it's like, they don't know what we got here in Kansas City. It's like, yeah, that's true. But then why is it not like, then how come no one's buying it, It's like an open market, you just put your stuff out there. And so, and I just think that just speaks to, you need to look out, you need to broaden the perspective a little bit, in some sense, or just exposure to all these different kind of music types, and just knowing what the ceiling is. 'Cause that's the thing in Kansas City, like, there's a lot of very talented musicians, and there's some world-class musicians, I would say, but the opportunity to hear them, I think Brahm sticks out as an example. It's just like, that's someone who it's like, that's so rare to be able to hear. I mean, but one reason why, it's like he has one very narrow, like he plays within his skill set, and he's like just the master at it. Well, he has, and he also plays like really great accordion, and a bunch of other stuff, and bass. But at least with stride piano, it's like he plays in his style, and it's just, crushing. And then he keeps evolving in his style. Anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is that, and this is something that like when I think about, like, I don't know if have you ever talked to Dominique Sanders?
Yes, years ago I did.
Yeah, when I think about someone like him, it's like he works in he lives in LA now. He works with, like, he's beyond, he does some jazz stuff, like with Terrace Martin, the guy who, produces Kendrick Lamar stuff, but he does mainly hip hop, and he's like in there with like all the guys, like Robert Glasper, all the jazz guys too, and like he's like totally, I mean, he's sort of from he is from LA, but he like developed, I think, in a lot of ways, or maybe even just musically, or got his chops a lot in Kansas City. Like, we played in a salsa band with Miguel Mambo like like 10 years ago maybe, or like I was already in it, and then he came in as a new bass player, and that was like one of his first gigs, and mine too. And so, but someone like that is like, he thinks on a way bigger scale, or like Logan Richardson. Once there can be an audience that can receive that kind of stuff, like in Denver, they have like a great jazz radio station, Kuvo. Like I don't know, a staff of like 5. Have you ever been to that, Kuvo? Or do you know anything? Do you know Kuvo?
Years ago, I went through Denver and I saw a gig there, and I can't remember where it was at. It was like '98, so it's been a while.
Oh, that could have been at there's this one place. It was right next to the baseball. It's right next to the baseball stadium. Now it's a blues club, Chapultepec, El Chapultepec.
Yeah.
That's probably what. Yeah. Now they have a couple nice jazz clubs, good scene, great scene, but a lot of support from the radio, and getting like a lot of emphasis on getting people's music and the recordings out there in a well supported way. And like, that's good that like you're doing that with the interviews, and it's like that's the stuff that I think Kansas City needs, is to be like, look, there's value within the context of like what Kansas City offers, but like in a world, like, just, I don't know, just think about posterity too, and just like more of a worldwide scale, because it's just like, it's not just about playing your gigs in Kansas City of standards, that people are talking and chatting through like all night long, and then you're like, well, how come no one will stop listening? It's because you're playing a song that's it's like 100 years old, and it's like jazz is like a super high level form of karaoke when you're doing like standards, and so it's like, what is this music really bringing? And it's like, because that satisfies people that don't want to pay a cover charge, just want to come and have a drink, and so it's basically people in Kansas City. But that kind of level doesn't satisfy people in New York when they want to pay like $30 to get in, and they got to pay another $20-30 minimum, or like clubs around the world where it's the same thing. So it's like, once people in Kansas City, I think, just the more and more the audience can realize that, and I think it's happening, and anyway, I don't know if that was.
No, that was good. No, that was good. That was good. What I want to know now is, what was the first live jazz show you ever saw that really blew your doors down?
Well, in terms of, I'd say probably seeing Brahm play at Jardines. Yeah, just like how is this possible that that this guy sitting there playing like, you know, that in control and that smooth, but he's improvising. Like, what? And then I was like, also this dude's weird. He's like making weird faces and noises. I'm like, but like the piano part of what he's doing is all smooth, but he's just acting all weird. What's going on? So I was just like, that is, you know, 'cause I think when I first heard or thought about jazz, yeah, I think, you know, I saw like a Chick Corea, or I don't even know how I first got into it really. But then I remember Herman Mahari showed me a Benny Green CD, Testifying, live at the Village Vanguard, like I think 1991. And then that was at the end of freshman year of college. And then I was like, oh, you got to listen to jazz to learn it? Like I just had my head, you know, way up my ass. I still do, but then it was like I was studying jazz, but I didn't even know what I was doing. And like the first chords I was playing when I got into Brahms combo was like 2 C major chords, like doubling in the left and the right hand for like a C chord. It's like, whoa. And like I've joked with Bobby a time or two recently. I'm like, hey, what's up? And like, you know, I mean, I don't really know Bobby that well, but he's still like, yeah, I remember like when you first came into your audition, because I was in the audition and he was eating lunch, but then he came in like during my audition. I'm like, oh, there's Bobby, whoa. And then I was playing, you know, some terrible stuff. And then I was like, but I can play ragtime really well, so I just played some ragtime, and they're probably like, what the hell, like, well, you know, we'll take, like, just throw him in there, whatever. Like, he can always quit, or we can get rid of him. Because I think they just needed to fill spots, probably. But because of that, then, you know, anyway, so, but the first performance, yeah, seeing Brahm play was really, and then, you know, also the other main person I'd say is like, I got to see I've been fortunate to see Benny Green play. He's probably my favorite piano player living. Seeing him play, you know, a lot at this point, maybe like 30 times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Just someone that's trying to like, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Because I don't want to sound too like, pompous, but you know, sometimes a little bit like Icarus, like you're getting really close to like what to understand, I think, and to be an artist in some way, you have to relinquish certain controls and let go of like certain parts of your life, I think, in some ways, in order to let that creativity flow through you. And then like that can just kind of, you know, just a tough life to live, and everyone knows, you know, people like musicians, they say that it's like it's a tough life, but then, you know, you meet certain musicians and you're like, oh, this person seems like they're so happy and like they're just loving life. But then like, you know, maybe you talk to them like, I mean, that's like when you're talking to certain musicians before the gig, and I'm a person that is trying to get in touch with kind of like what I think music is like, kind of the, you know, the eternal cosmic rhythm or something, you know, like just that there's always this rhythm or this soundtrack going on out there in the world, and like you just want to train your mind and your, you know, and your fingers and just your whole mental and your whole lifestyle in order to get as close and to have as much ability to tune in and tap into that as long as you can. And to me, that what that means is you got to structure your life and your day so that you're like, all right, if I want to be able to get to that point where I can, you know, be able to perform in this way, I need to prepare in this way. And it's like, you know, so basically what I'm trying to do is maximize the states of flow that you can achieve in order to, with music, in order to like, you know, just hope and assume in the most optimistic way possible that that would bring value to other people. Just because, like, you know, so basically if one person just thinks that what you're doing is cool, then it's worth it. I mean, that's maybe a little exaggerated because you got to make money, obviously. But just in general, that's just to try to tap in, as you know, take care of yourself as much as you can, so you can tap into that, the cosmic, like an eternal kind of cosmic rhythm or melody. That then you can just, that moment you can, if you know, because then when the lights are on, it's like, okay, now it's 7 o'clock, you got to start playing. You're like, well, but I'm like in a bad mood, or like this one thing happened to me. It's like, you know, it doesn't matter. You got to start, you know, you got to be able to tune in. Like your skills have to be such that you can say, I'll, like, so it's a mental, just everything has to be sharp. Your mind, your fingers, and just so that you can hopefully just, make some kind of positive, bring positive energy into the world.
That's a great answer, man. Hey, Paul, thanks for getting back with me. Thanks for taking a minute out, and good luck with the return to the stage and the return to the world. I appreciate it.
Exactly. And thanks, Joe. Thanks for what you're doing. It's great that you got such a roster of people, because it's once people hear one interview, then they can go and start looking at what your other interviews are. So.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Denver, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Paul for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.